What if you could take that risk, make that change, reach that goal, live your best life? Welcome to another episode of the What If You Could podcast, where we get together with amazing experts and everyday people. I'm your host, Gary Scott, and I'm excited that you're along for the ride. Hey, everybody, it is Gear, and I am super excited today. I have a gentleman who I call my spirit animal because he is just so dialed into the stuff that I
Oh my
love
God.
and what he's doing and stretching out. So I'm going to introduce you to Dr. David Wright, and I want to read his bio just the beginning because this man is doing so much. I just want you to get a depth of whom he is, and then he'll help fill in the rest of the stuff. But Dr. David Wright achieved his MD in July of 2010, graduating summa cum laude, which is a 4.0 G point average, which is 4.0 higher than mine, from Xavier University School of Medicine. His primary emphasis in medical school were forensic psychiatry, addiction psychiatry, addiction medicine, and neurology. While attending medical school, Dr. David concurrently, in a row, completed three master's degrees back to back: an MHSA in healthcare law and policy, an MBA in healthcare administration, and an MM in healthcare management. I'm exhausted just thinking about
And I lost my good sleep because of it too.
it. I
I used
bet
to
you
sleep
could.
with like a baby before that.
Dr. David is a physician, i.e., a medical doctor, a certified hypnotherapist, a board certified NLP practitioner, neuro linguistic programming, a board certified coach, and a board certified timeline therapy practitioner, which I
Mm,
want to dig into because I don't know
yeah,
what that is, who
you'll love it.
specializes in non pharmacologic, psychoanalytic, and psychodynamic methods of helping individuals and groups to achieve positive changes and breakthroughs. Besides that, Dr. David has three books and two clinics. His books are The Nutrient Diet, Tomato Bisque for the Brain, which I love, but my favorite, because I eat these all the time, and
I
my wife
love
and I
tomato
love these:
bisque.
Sweet Potato Pie for the Spirit, Soul, and Psyche. I just love that. Besides that, the
It
clinics and
rolls off the
stuff,
tongue.
this gentleman is a grower and a builder and an impressive gentleman, and I'm so excited to have him with us today and share this. So, Dr. David, I'm gonna let you go. What
Well,
tell us about yourself and how on earth you navigated all this stuff.
thank you so much for that kind introduction. I truly appreciate it. Um, you know, it, it's funny because I remember that when somebody like a mentor of mine has had like an intro as they call it, an introduction or a profile. And I remember when I first came up with mine, kind of maybe a couple of years after I graduated from medical school and started working and everything. But it's funny. If you were to ask me what I am, I would really say I am really a healer. That's what I would say. Degrees aside, all of those things aside, I think that people like me, people like you, what we do, I think, we're energy traders. We move energy from one place to another, um, and that energy can be emotional energy, it could be psychological, it could be intellectual energy, it could be mental energy, if you wanted to use that term. It could be soul energy. It could be spirit energy. I think we move energy. So that's, if you ask me what I am, I think I'm a healer, but I think I move energy and I help people move energy. One of the analogies that I love to use with my clients is what I call the handbag analogy. And the handbag analogy is this, and it's about objectivity, but it's also about organization and planning. If you take, let's take a stereotype of a woman with a huge, like for instance, a Dooney and Burke bag or Louis Vuitton bag, one of those huge bags that that looks like You could put your garage in it. If you take one of those huge bags, pretty soon, a corollary for a guy would be a briefcase or something. Although men carry bags these days too. So I don't want to. I don't want to pigeonhole anybody, but yeah, I mean, if you've got a big bag, something that you use to organize who you are and what you do, whether it's a handbag or a purse, or whether it's a briefcase or even a gym bag, eventually, if you use it a lot, it's going to be overloaded with stuff. And the question is what do you do then? Well, you could try, like most people do, kind of instinctually and intuitively, to reorganize it with everything inside, but you're not going to get very far. You literally have to dump everything out of that bag in order. That's the easiest way to organize it. And when you do that, you're going to find a lot of stuff that you've got in there that you didn't even know were there, like tacos and Slurpees and you know, Cinnabons and honey buns,
It's gonna be messy,
biscuits,
basically, is what you're saying. It's gonna be
muffins,
a messy
casserole,
exercise, right?
lasagna,
Casserole.
sandwiches,
But
all kinds.
that's a messy way to unload your stuff, right? That's pretty messy. It's not a real effective way to just dump it out on the floor, right?
Well, but you have to do that though, and hence the whiteboard behind me. That's what I'm doing with people's thoughts and ideas when we do a whiteboard session to get through grief or anger management or loss or procrastination or decision making or panic attacks or whatever it is. You have to work through it. And the thing about it is you have to have a workbench. I think I got my first computer at age 12 or 13. My parents it's still I'm still so thankful that my parents were willing to spend, I don't know what, the $3,000-4,000. That's back when computers were very expensive and there were only a few companies that made them. But I mean, they got me this computer system when I was like 12 or 13 or whatever. And you had to buy everything separately. It didn't come together. The hard drive was one, the disk drive, I should say. It wasn't even a hard drive, it was a disk drive. It was a floppy disk drive, 5 1/4. The monitor, all that stuff was separately, and they bought it at Sears, and I think the total was like 3,500 or something like that. But you know, I remember around that time, that was before there was like an actual UI. So now, if you use a Mac or use Windows, it's a real organized environment with icons on the desktop and all that kind of stuff. But before that, it wasn't. You just got a cursor and that was it. And then I remember a Commodore Amiga, because I had a Commodore 128. Commodore came out with this thing called Workbench, and it was on the Amiga, the Commodore Amiga. If people remember that came around the same time as the Apple II GS and things like that. And that was back when operating systems were coming into play, organized operating system where you could write documents and things like that. But they had one called Workbench, and the whole idea behind it was that you need a workbench in order to be productive. Right? In order to be organized and get things done, you've got to have a workbench. You've got to have a place where work gets done. And that's what I call it. You can't get work done inside of a bubble. You've got to have objective eyes. And so whenever you've got a problem, you've got to dump that problem out somewhere, whether it's with you, or whether it's with me, or whether it's with a psychiatrist or a therapist or a psychologist or whoever, or for your taxes or your accounting with an accountant or a tax, but you've got to dump it out somewhere. And so I love that analogy. You cannot reorganize a handbag or a briefcase without dumping everything out. If you do, you're going to rearrange the same stuff over and over and waste time. It's easier if you just unpack everything and then repack it. And you're going to discover a whole bunch of junk, what I call baggage, that shouldn't be there in the first place and doesn't fit and is displacing the things that need to go in there. If you've got, a handbag or a briefcase and you've got honey buns and cheesecake and milkshakes and all this stuff in there, well, yeah, you can't fit your calculator in there. You can't fit your iPhone or your iPad or your tablet or your stylus and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, because you've got food in there. Maybe you didn't mean to have food in there, but at some point life got busy and it got in there. So that's the baggage that we have to release and let go of and clean. And that's what I think I help people do. If you really want to boil it down to it, I help people heal by helping them unpack their baggage, get rid of the junk that they don't need, and then repackage everything up in an organized, efficient, productive way so that they can be the person that they were designed to be.
I think what's so interesting about you is you don't pigeonhole anything. You know what I mean? You're
That makes me sound indecisive.
no, yeah. Well, there's that Virgo male thing, it's that perfection
True.
thing. But
Seeing
you're
every
willing
side
to
of
look
things.
at all sorts of different types of therapies. You specialize in so many different types of therapies. You're willing to take on so many different types of treatment, so many different types of patients, and address them in so many different ways. And I think that's what's phenomenal. It's like, you should have people who are so dyed in the wool of, I will only do this, right? But you're not like that. I mean, you're very open about, listen, I do different types of things for different type of folks. And I mean, am I getting that right, or am I messing that up?
No, no, you are getting it right. And you know what I call it? I call it a childlike approach.
The
Uh,
what approach?
call it a childlike approach.
Hmm.
I call it a return to innocence. I think that we're born brilliantly as children, and we live in a world that teaches us stuff. But in teaching us stuff, it corrupts kind of the open kind of playfield that we have about how to do things. And it's like the phrase from the mouth of babes. You'll hear a kid say something that's so brilliant and insightful. You're just like, oh my God, we've got all these people in charge of our government and in charge of corporations, and nobody thought of that. I remember a movie that I watched, gosh, 2 decades ago, and I need to rewatch it because it had such a powerful lesson. But it was about this little boy, and his whole thing, you can look it up, was about this idea that he came to about paying it forward, where you just help somebody and you don't worry about whether you get something back or how much it costs you or anything. You just pay it forward, and then that person pays it forward. And I remember watching that movie. It was probably maybe 20 years ago, and I just cried when I thought about. And that kid had a story to tell. That kid didn't just come to that conclusion; he had a journey. And I cried for him and his journey. But it was such a brilliant thing that he came up with. When we are children, when we're born, we have an open slate. We don't have these fixed constraints on what's possible and what's not possible. Anything's possible.
And
And
I
I
don't think I think where you started with this is they don't have a filter. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
They're not
sure.
like, oh, I'm going to think about before what I say before I say it,
Let me package it up.
because
Yeah,
I'm worried about what someone's going to think about it. They just fire it off, right? It just comes
absolutely.
flying out of their pie hole because
Absolutely.
you're not overthinking stuff.
Right,
And
right.
when we get so caught up into the years of negative affirmations and negative, growing up and
Self-limiting belief.
negative messages, right? That we become afraid to have that
Sure.
childlike. That's why I love that you said childlike. That's why I asked you to repeat it again. I want to be sure that's what you said, because
Yeah.
it's so true. It's just to step back to that child. There's something else that I hate to spin off, but we do that. But something else you said when we had talked before, which was about the seasons
Mm,
and about gardening,
mhm.
right? And it just reminded me of kind of like that childhood. And I'm a real grounder. I always try to get barefoot on grass. Just we just don't do that anymore in life, right?
Right.
And to feel that earth and the season stuff. But
Yeah.
but this childhood thing that you just said is it's just so right on. We have to drop back to this innocence, this not being afraid to be who we are, this not being afraid to share things. It just seems like an easier way to be, right?
No, absolutely. You know, that's, I think it's more holistic. I think it's more natural. One of my favorite words is natural. I grew up in Arkansas. I was born in Chicago. I grew up in Arkansas. Arkansas is the natural state. And I'm
We just
proud.
bought a house in Arkansas. We're
Huh?
moving
Oh,
to
really?
Arkansas.
No way.
Yeah, we're moving to Arkansas. We bought a house in Maumelle, about
Oh my
5 minutes
God, I know
outside Little Rock.
exactly where that is. Then we
Yeah,
need to hang out because I've got a lot of friends, good people I can introduce you to there. So
can't
yeah.
wait. Love Arkansas, man.
Oh my God, some of the best water in the world.
Oh,
I don't know if it's the hot springs or what, but the water there tastes like no other.
yeah.
But the thing about it's a natural state, and I think one of the problems, the reason why everybody has anxiety these days, and why everybody's attention is divided and things like that, is I think as a species, humans have an identity crisis right now. I don't think if we don't know if we want to be natural or if we want an automated machine world. It's so funny when I talk to people about AI. I remember when the first time I heard AI, it was with a friend of mine who I haven't contacted it or kept in contact with a long time because he moved, but he was kind of talking about AI way back in 2007, 2008. He was working on AI. And I was like, what's AI? What's artificial intelligence? And then he explained to me what it was. And then, I thought about it. I was like, okay, the Terminator, yada, yada, yada. and I thought about the Matrix and all these kind of things. But the thing about AI is it's it's kind of like opening up Pandora's box. Sometimes when you ask for something, you might just get what you're asking for, and what you end up with might not be what you want. I remember a long time ago, I saw this. I'm going to be a little bit lewd here, if that's okay. But I remember a cartoon that I remember seeing in medical school, and it was so funny. And they went to this guy, this Arab guy in the Middle East. It was like Egypt or Saudi Arabia or something. And this genie, he was traveling in the desert. He was delirious. This genie appeared and all this kind of stuff. And the genie asked him what he wanted, and he described what he wanted, and he said something like, yeah, he said, I want to be white, rich, and surrounded by beautiful women. And I think the genie turned him into like a tampon or something. I mean, it was hilarious. But it's really important to think about what you ask for and what you want, and if it's really what you want, you should think about it. Because honestly, when people ask me about AI, it scares the hell out of me. I think it's a dangerous move. I think there's a thin line between wanting or creating things that assist you and creating things that are you or that will be you. And I think we're just kind of organizing our own replacement. I'm not trying to get on a tangent about AI, but my point is that we have an identity crisis. We don't know if we want to be machines or if we want to be living species. And the funny thing is we don't realize this because we can't see ourselves objectively, but we're becoming more and more machine-like all the time. And if you compare us to our ancestors, we're becoming more and more mechanical, machine-like, and all those things. And I don't think it's a good thing, because I think the animal kingdom parts of us are part of what makes us who we are and part of how we tick. And the further that we get away from that, the more lost we end up. And we
Yeah.
won't figure out why until we go, you know what? It's all this other junk that we've surrounded ourselves. This isn't really, in essence, who we are.
Well, just look. I mean, just case in point. Look what they've done to our food. I mean, they've taken our food, and that's why
Yeah.
also
And
was
that's why all these
enamored by
people are
you with
getting all
that
these
book.
GI conditions and skin conditions. And I'm
Yeah.
going to do a podcast episode about that. But there's like all these drugs, Skyrizi and this drug and this, and they all work the same way. They're all like monoclonal antibodies or this or that. But it's just like, it's not by accident that you've got all these diseases of the gut and the skin popping up, because what are our largest organs?
Our
The gut and the
skin.
skin, and that's where the food ends up.
Exactly.
And so, gee, if our food is being manufactured and changed and reiterated and genetically designed and with all these additives and stuff, our bodies don't know what to do with it. So it's not a shock. It shouldn't be a shock or a surprise that people's bodies are rejecting these things, because they're not natural for us.
Yeah.
Plus, you've got to add in global warming and climate change and all that stuff, which is changing the milieu in terms of the organisms around us: bacteria, viruses, fungus, molds, all those kind of things. So we have some decisions to make, whether we want to live and do the work as humans that we need to do, or if we want to have machines to do the work for us. And if we get machines to do the work for us and think for us, we got a problem.
Yeah.
We got a
We
serious
do. We
problem,
do. And it
and we
comes
don't even
back.
know it.
It comes back to a lot of the work that you're doing, which is, and what I'm working with too, is in the grief, is that we need to take ourselves way down, and we need to get back into where we are, where we started, to do our healing and find ourselves, because we hide behind social media. People are so much more aggressive. They're so much more triggered. They're not even who they are anymore. And I think a lot of people step back and go, man, I can't believe I got so dang triggered. Or, why did I react that way? Or why do I feel
Right.
this way? And I've had a phrase that I've used for my whole life almost. I'm sure it was from some healer or Gandhi or someone, but I've said forever, listen, I love you, I bless you, and I let you go. And I found myself doing that like 5 times a day now. But I
That's
just
balance. That's balancing your mental, spiritual, psychological checkbook. That's balancing.
yeah.
That's what a balance. That's what you see on a balance sheet, right? You've
Yep.
got debits and credits. You've got assets and you've got liabilities. That's the definition. When if somebody tells me that they are an expert or in accounting or taxes and things like that, and they don't understand the concept of assets and liabilities, then our conversation is over because that's the basis. And
Yeah.
that's what we do. That's one of the things that I actually love about science fiction. If you take a movie like The Matrix,
Mhm.
that's what the Oracle talks about balancing equations.
Yeah.
And we are an equation and we have to constantly rebalance. And I think we don't know where to go now because we've got all this technology that we've created, but without being religious about it, because I don't really think of myself as a religious person. I think of myself as more of a spiritual person and psychological person. I think you have to be really, really careful about recreating things that the universe and God have created because God and the universe, in my opinion, if you believe in evolution, created things with patience and with time. And when you
Mhm.
subtract time and patience away, you get a lot of mistakes.
Well, and look what, to bring it back to the food thing and just to bring back to the water thing and to bring it back to the spirituality of it and to the soul, like you talk about the soul a lot and stuff in your work and your books, is that our souls are being seriously damaged. Our energy is being damaged, our soul is being damaged,
Yes.
our fiber, our nutrients, our core by the food, the water, the stress, the
The
anger,
environment.
by the environment. So it's like we need to get back to healing our soul, and that's why I'm so intrigued by so much of your work because you do so much in so many different areas. And you told me about your whiteboard, how you'll take
That you
folks
can
and
see
you'll
behind me.
put that on your whiteboard. You'll write them through and take people, to not break them down. I don't really like that term, break them
No.
down, but
Mm-mm.
you'll open them up.
Yeah.
You'll open them up
Build them up.
to and build them up. And I loved that. I love that because it's just we need that. We need healing desperately right now. We as people, we just do.
We hope you enjoyed part 1 with Dr. David Wright. Join us next time for part 2.
Thanks again for joining us on another episode of What If You Could podcast. Please subscribe, like, share, and give us any feedback. We'd love to hear it. And remember, if you can dream it, you can do it. See you next time.